CHR's first Human Rights Award winner is a renowned attorney, Stephen Scheller. His Philadelphia-based law firm opposes some of the biggest pharmaceutical companies at a national level. In fact, the Philadelphia Inquirer calls him a scourge of the pharmaceutical industry. Mr. Scheller is known for his dedication to protection, equality, and justice. His pursuit of justice began long ago. During the civil rights movement, judges asked him to represent activists that had been jailed for protesting discrimination of minorities, and he won those civil rights cases. Today, he champions the rights of children and others who have been damaged by psychiatric drugs by fiercely taking on pharmaceutical companies on their behalf.
Mr. Scheller also works with whistleblowers to expose criminal practices in the psychopharmaceutical industry. This includes the industry's cover-up of serious adverse effects found during psychiatric drug clinical trials, yet the drugs are marketed to the public as safe. As such, he has been joined by the U.S. Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney General, and other law firms in whistleblower lawsuits. For example, after a former executive blew the whistle on Shire Pharmaceuticals, the company was found guilty of making fraudulent claims about its stimulants used to treat so-called ADHD. They had claimed that Adderall could prevent car accidents, divorce, loss of employment, and criminal behavior. Exposing that fraud cost the company nearly $59 million. But that was a drop in the ocean compared to the monumental amounts Mr. Scheller won against the manufacturers of antidepressants and antipsychotics. Here's a preview of some of the work of this legendary attorney.
My experience with pharma, unfortunately, has been they seem to have a real problem discerning between what they should be doing to help people with good medications as differentiated from trying to sell the medications. And I've been involved in litigation with them for many, many years, and I've become extremely disturbed over their conduct.
The Congress is busy trying to balance the budget. When we have drugs that are costing Medicare and Medicaid billions of dollars a year, that is a tax on our taxpayers. I don't want useless, dangerous drugs on the market costing taxpayers money. If they really want to save money on our budget for medicine, Medicare, and Medicaid, then this should be stopped. These antipsychotic drugs, these SSRIs, this needs to be stopped. You've got the foxes in the chicken coop, and you don't have one fox, you got a bunch of them. Victims are the children who are given these pills. For example, bipolar in children, which was created by a Harvard psychiatrist named Biederman. He got millions of dollars from drug companies, and that's part of the problem, because you have to have a diagnosis of psychosis. So they create a psychotic theory. Oh, these kids have bipolar. The New York Times has written up the whole story about millions. We're talking about large sums of money, and it's the psychiatry drugs that actually are turning out to be the #1 problem. Those are drugs which, whether they're effective and what their adverse event profiles are, have been vastly overstated in terms of effectiveness and vastly understated in terms of causing diabetes, pancreatitis, boys to grow breasts. Did you know that? Steve,
little boys are growing breasts from one of
do you-
these drugs.
Steve?
There are all kinds of adverse events for the kids. Tardive dyskinesia, where they shake, diabetes. For what are you doing this? Money. The kids that are picked on, the adolescents and children, are often from poor families because Medicaid picks up their costs. And the taxpayers are the ones that are being built on this. You're talking about huge numbers of children and adolescents put on these drugs, put at risk. For example, just for breast growth, Risperdal is causing young boys to grow female breasts. Can you imagine being a little boy or being a teenager? We have kids who wrap themselves with tape. We have them refusing to go to gym. The families that I represent, it's extremely painful to me personally. I feel their pain.
Two legal icons are teaming up for trial against Johnson & Johnson. Philadelphia lawyers Stephen Scheller and Tom Klein take on J&J on behalf of boys and young men who claim that Risperdal, a drug they were prescribed, caused them to grow female-sized breasts, a condition called gynecomastia that in some cases led to surgical removal known as mastectomies.
A drug company taking advantage of children and adolescents who already may have some problems and giving them a pill that makes things so much worse for them. It's just very disturbing to both of us. We are the ones that started the tsunami, if you want to call it that, and we're the ones that have been working on it for 10 years. Thousands and thousands of children every day are on these different kinds of pills. I've been involved now with these cases from early 2000. I represent whistleblowers who have inside information about misconduct. They are doing it because they felt so, just like I do, very upset about what's going on, that they were putting children and adolescents and others at risk by not telling the true story about the products, the drugs they're selling. The drug companies hate me because this has cost them a lot of money. And not only that, they've had to change what they're doing. You know, they can't be paying off these doctors, you know. I've collected for our government and our taxpayers with litigation over $6 billion as co-counsel with others. First, we have Zyprexa, which was $1.420 billion. With the Pfizer case we have, which included Geodon, was $2.3 billion. Then we have Seroquel, which was $520 million. Then, of course, you have Risperdal, which was $2.2 billion. And I'm involved in all of those cases.
Trial lawyers just love to get hold of a case like this next one. Eli Lilly pleading guilty to criminal conduct after skating under the radar for years. The company striking a deal to pay a record $1 billion, folks, $420 million to settle criminal and civil investigations involving the antipsychotic drug Zyprexa.
I'm honored to stand here today with dedicated colleagues from within the Department of Justice as well as beyond it to announce a historic settlement with Pfizer Incorporated. Combination civil and criminal settlement, Pfizer has agreed to pay $2.3 billion, the largest healthcare fraud settlement in the history of the Department of Justice. Within that $2.3 billion is a criminal fine of $1.195 billion, which makes it the largest criminal fine in history.
Pharmaceutical giant Johnson & Johnson is revolving one of the biggest healthcare fraud cases in U.S. history. The company will pay the Justice Department $2.2 billion after charges of false marketing for one of its most popular drugs.
The Justice Department alleges Johnson & Johnson boosted sales by paying millions of dollars in kickbacks to pharmacists and doctors.
Johnson & Johnson and 3 of its subsidiaries have agreed to pay more than $2.2 billion to resolve criminal as well as civil claims that they marketed prescription drugs for uses that were never approved as safe and effective, and that they paid kickbacks to both physicians and pharmacies for prescribing and promoting these drugs. These are not victimless crimes.
Something has got to change, and it has to do with a concern for doing what's right. Find ways of protecting children and adolescents that are better than they're doing now, because whatever they're doing, it isn't working. What really is